I guess I'll start with Bitcoin. We talk about this like every 2 weeks, but I feel like I don't know if we've disagreed on anything. I think we disagree on like lower time frames sometimes, but collectively, I think all three of us are sort of in sync as far as what we expect to happen here. We had a nice pop up this weekend, this long weekend, which is classic crypto. Like, not only is everybody out to launch on vacation, but it's also, um, you know, so that's what crypto does. It just waits for the lowest liquidity time and then moves. But anyway, so we hopped up on the debt ceiling stuff, which doesn't really make too much sense, but it was one of the few markets that was open. So I guess people are like looking to trade something on the news. I don't really know the justification there. I don't know if you guys have any thoughts on that, but just kind of weird. You know, the weekend futures market of the world is open, I guess you could say. There's also the Turkish election, which I don't think would have influenced the price too much.
I did notice on that note that the what was it, the Turkish lira and the dollar pair, that there was a big movement this morning on that. That was all over the social media stuff.
Yeah, I thought it was at all-time lows, but I haven't looked at it today.
Yeah, it was like getting
Um,
scary for them.
but you know, if you're in Turkey, if you're in an emerging market, if you're in Venezuela, Argentina, Lebanon, right, these places where your currency is just blowing up before your eyes, this is an alternative for you. Us in the U.S. are pretty privileged in that regard, and I can't even imagine what that would be like. Most people work their whole lives to grow a stack of something, and then to lose the purchasing power like that, uh, it kind of forces you to do things that you wouldn't otherwise do. You know, and that's what Bitcoin's for: safety hatch, escape valve. Anyway, so price, even with a bump on the weekend, the cloud, the actual real deal cloud settings of the daily doubled, still hasn't changed as far as my expectations. It still leans bearish. It's still barely hanging on by a thread above the 200-week moving average, the top green line there. But this still does not look healthy to me. It does not look bullish. It's still contending with this head and shoulders that hasn't broken down yet. But this thing to me remains bearish to neutral until we get a bullish TK cross above the cloud. So until that time, the expectation is that this will eventually break down, whether that is 24, which is looking less likely than maybe 25.3. You know, kind of depends on when this makes it through the cloud. But one other trade alternatively would be the 200 week to the 20, sorry, what is this? 200 week to the 200 day. Yeah, which is this bottom green line.
Hmm.
This was the SVB bounce on the 200 day as well. So I can't think of anything in the near term as to why this would be bullish. We had that Hong Kong news a couple of weeks ago where like retail is going to be able to buy crypto, at least Bitcoin on ETH, on like today, buy today. And I haven't seen any price effect yet. So that was like the one thing, right? It's like who's buying here? Why are they buying? Maybe Asia because they have this like ability to do so where they didn't before. But other than that, it is slim pickings out there. At least on the daily. You know, like we can zoom out and say everything looks fine, and it does. Like we can look at the power law corridor. We can look at let's go to the weekly. Like this looks fine, right? Zoomed way out.
Mm-hmm.
I think if you're a DCA champion, a DCA enjoyer, uh, what is it called? A paycheck. I forget what I used to do that like 2015. Every 2 weeks, like a paycheck DCA.
Before you were
Uh,
rich.
whatever. But yes, so I think if you're one of those people, you're totally fine here, NFA. But if you're just trading like the
Yeah.
intra-week stuff, I think you're looking for this to break down. That's my assumption. But maybe we're too bearish and like everyone's already sold or short and no one else is left. I don't know. I don't know if we should be counter trading our own sentiment here, but
Well, every trade setup I've seen on the like medium to low time frame, they just get blown out. Like the trade starts to trend, like you can finally get your arms around a half decent setup, and then there's a stop hunt or a liquidity grab or something that just blows it up. Just bear market games. It sucks right now.
Yeah, Schmidt talks about this as well. Like to see that move happen on the weekend versus during US trading hours is also
Mm.
very suspect because again,
Yeah.
liquidity is low, like the adults aren't really in the room, you know.
That
Like,
impulse upward that we just had, that's what you're talking about?
yeah, when we had
Oh,
this move over the weekend,
yeah.
right?
That
Where
26 to 28, that one.
we're like realistically, like we're breaking a multi-week, like maybe 2 week level at like 27.5. It looked okay on the 4 hour. But it's just it was on a weekend during a holiday in the US, you know, like
Right.
and there's no one really trading this right now. That's just my
Yeah.
perception. Like
I think
liquidity, go ahead.
just liquidity in general is low,
Yeah.
but it's even lower on the weekend. So it's
Right.
very easy to slip and cause liquidation cascades for people who have overnight positions or over weekend positions. And any strong move on the weekend has a really high strike rate of getting faded by the midweek. And that's kind of what we're seeing here for sure.
Yeah. And something else Jack talks about is this, pre-halving year, which we're in, and connecting that with the weekly cloud. Like we've always had our best moves through the weekly cloud, and those have always been relative to halving dates. So for me, I'm just trying not to like lose my shirt here because it's all just like
Mm-hmm.
doesn't matter, Like what we're really waiting for is what is this like a few weeks? We'll say 100 days after having 100 to 150 days after having. If we aren't on our way to the moon by that period of time, then things get interesting. But here, it's just like, whatever, right? Look at any metric you want. Look at volume, look at DeFi, look at NFTs, look at all the layoffs that are still happening. Binance laying off people, Nansen laying off people. Like there's just very little attention and eyeballs in crypto right now.
Yeah. And I'll go over this later, but Google Trends is also back to like the pre-hype low.
Right.
It's cyclical or whatever. We're back to those bottom. Nobody cares right now.
Right. But as a long-term capital allocator, like this is the time to seriously be looking at this, understanding it. How does it fit in the portfolio? What does it give to me after X? What is the potential return after X number of years? That sort of thing.
Yeah.
So as maybe not so good as it looks on the daily time frame, like this has tons of time still. Like I'm not worried about it at all in its current state. Even if it goes to 24, which ideally would be great. I would love to see that. I would love to see like emotion come back to the market because right now it's just
Yeah.
it's just like who cares,
Dead
right?
inside.
Even fear that counts, right? Pain.
Yeah,
Sure.
it gets eyeballs, it gets attention, it gets people thinking, looking at stuff. So love to see it. On top of all that, we've got where is it at? The DXY, which we were talking about in the pre-show. That's where the real alpha is at in the pre-show. We were
to
talking about
subscribe to that one.
yeah. We were talking about the DXY and how incredibly bullish it looks and how that's a problem, for everything. Not only is like the cost of capital going up because they're raising rates, likely to raise rates again, but also dollar strength. And anytime you have a strong dollar, it's not great for anything that's paired against the dollar. But on technicals, this looks like an Adam and Eve all day. Not quite to that 105 level.
Are you showing?
Oh no, we still see
sorry.
your yeah.
Sorry, so
there
this
you go.
is DXY. Looks like an Adam and Eve all day on the daily. Looks amazing. Looks super bullish. It looks as bullish to me here as bearish as it did up here. I don't see this breaking down. The worst that could probably happen is like a triple bottom situation, but this looks great. Even on the cloud, I'm sure it's getting there. So it's hard to be bullish crypto when you're looking at this as well. Like this just adds on to the evidence. Like, yeah, okay, for me at least, like we're probably gonna calm down a little bit. One other quick thing I want to talk about would be the S&P, which every day it's like, did you know there's only 7 things in the S&P that are holding the entire market up? Every day it's like breadth. That's all people are talking about, but it doesn't seem to matter, at least for now. But this long-term view of this inverted head and shoulders type fractal still holds up for me. I don't know about you guys. Like, it certainly doesn't look bearish, you know. Maybe I think people expect this to look worse than it is because of their viewpoint on the economy potentially. And
Yeah, I feel that as well.
But just looking at the chart and sort of ignoring everything else, like this still looks completely fine. You know, maybe you could argue an ascending triangle. Sorry, not ascending. Rising wedge here. But as long as it can hold above this yearly pivot, 40-40, I think it's fine. The debt ceiling stuff looks to be done. You know, and it never was realistically gonna explode. So that's probably why the market didn't really take any of that stuff seriously. But it looks fine, you know. I don't know. Like, this looks okay to me until it's below 4K again, which is all the more reason for Powell to just say, yeah, we're going to keep raising here. Looks fine.
What do you think
thanks
Powell
for
does?
whatever.
What do you
I think he
Powell
still
does?
raises 25.
What do you think
Yeah,
the ultimate is from here? Like how many more raises?
I think they could raise 2 more 25s.
That's actually exactly what my bet is. That's what I think.
But if you look at, you know, it depends what they want to look at. Do they want to look at core PCE? Great. That's basically up slightly, and over the past 3 months has been flat and is still too high. So if they're using that as justification, keep raising. If they're using unemployment as justification, even though the numbers are probably not real, keep raising, right? Like, if that's what they're going to be using, then sure, keep going. If we look at trueflation, which some people have been dunking on because it's not as perfect as what the Fed uses as far as percentages and allocations, like, that's fine, but it's at least a real-time measure that you can look at, and it has been very good at the forward predictions, both on the top and even on the bottom. So, and it says we're below 3% here. Now, if you ask a family of 5 going to a restaurant if they think inflation is getting better or worse, I don't think they're going to tell you it's getting better. I don't know about you guys, but like, food costs are still insane.
Yeah, I'm a family of 4, and it sucks everywhere I go. It sucks.
Yeah. So, like, that anecdotal justification is, yeah, keep raising. What did Neil Kashkari say? Like, he looks at the price of the Stouffer's lasagna, the frozen.
Oh,
you remember that?
yeah.
Anyway, so I think they're going to keep going. As much as like the risk people like myself don't want them to, there's just too many things. Like, even a data point yesterday with the flight traffic, passengers basically going through the TSA is back to pre-pandemic levels. Like, everything's fine, you know, everything's totally fine. Just keep raising. Market can take it. Economy looks like it can take it. That's my read anyway.
Another anecdotal point. I went to Wendy's the other day for the first time in God knows how long. A regular meal from Wendy's was like $12. I was like, what the fuck is going on here? So yeah.
Yeah. Everything's $100. $100 is the new $20. Whenever you
I
go
know,
somewhere.
like, dude, to look at it, like, whenever you go to, you know, your favorite coffee shop, they turn it around. Even the tips, the default tips are 25%. You know what I mean? They're like,
Oh yeah, the little kiosk thing they turn
they're
around.
like, do you want to tip 25, 30, or 40%?
It's gonna ask you a few questions.
Yeah, the tipping everything is getting out of control for sure.
I like, if it's a local place, before they even flip the screen, I'm like, you can put $1 on there. I don't want to fool with it. There's a place I go where, like, if I do the drive-through, they want to hand you the machine through the window into my car, and then like,
just so you can potentially.
I'm like, no, just put $1 on it. God, it's a $4 coffee. What are we doing?
So my TLDR is, I'm in this warm bearish blanket of cozy feelings because they're probably going to raise. DXY is probably going to moon. Crypto looks soft on technicals. we don't have many people here. Like just as a group, engagement's down, no matter how you want to measure it.
Yeah.
Just pick something, right? Throw a dart, literally anything, any headline. Everything looks kind of just down still.
Facts.
Which is fine because we're in pre-halving, right? That's the bigger bear, the bigger bullish blanket that I'm in. I'm like a turducken of a turducken of
layer?
hopium. That's what it is. The outer layer is the
What's the-
pre-halving year layer,
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go.
All right.
Well,
I'll
Schmitty, why
stop-
don't you
I'll
do
stop.
yours? And because I gotta do some finagling when I do my screen.
Whoa. Okay.
TMI.
Make sure you do that off screen. Okay. Can you see this?
Yeah,
Sure can.
looking good.
Ideal. Okay.
What is that? That's so bullish.
Yeah. This is on the
Oh
chart
no,
that
it's the Dixie.
yeah, this is the chart your girlfriend doesn't want us. What is it? What is the meme? It's like
You versus the chart your girlfriend says not to worry
Yeah.
about.
yeah, exactly. That's this fellow right here. Just to like piggyback on what Josh was saying, I've been talking a lot about this level here, this zone of prices for Dixie, and this was created well before many of you were even born in the mid to late 80s. And the level is proving to be a tough cookie to crack, and we're seeing a strong rally coming off of this after on a very microscopic level. We took out this low here, like it just ever so slightly took out this liquidity and it is full sending it northbound. Now in terms of like trend, I obviously use different metrics than Josh does. We, different flavors of the same thing, but the cloud for the weekly set for the default settings on the weekly, they are objectively bearish, but they are teasing if this thing gets a close in here on the weekly, a potential move to the upside. And when we look at things like the Bollinger Bands, if we get a close anywhere near this upper band, this could trigger an upside continuation. General rule of thumb with Bollinger Bands is, they're relative trend indicators. And they tell you how consolidated or overbought or oversold a market is. And right now we had the opportunity to continue to the downside with this idea of like attaching to the lower band. And anytime you fail to continue a trend or begin a trend, that's usually a strong reversal signal. And so if we see this continuation here, getting a weekly attachment on this upper band, there's a really good chance that we could see strong continuation of the upside. So we really want to keep an eye on this weekly B band, because if we close, even if it closes green here and the next week closes up here, whatever week it does that. If it closes on this upper band, that would be considered a B band's breakout by those standards. And it basically is just teasing, that we're going to have more continuation of the upside, which would fall right in line with the Adam and Eve double bottom that Josh was talking about here. Which has a pretty nice upside target. If we're looking at that, it's measured from the atom to the neckline, we get 5.1. So we just project that upward, boom, whatever, somewhere up here. So we could see a pretty hefty move to the upside. And the
And
reason
Schmitty,
why,
let me pause it real quick, just because I know we have like 100 viewers and a lot of them are new, actually, just because when they chat, it'll say like first time chatter. And just as a heads up, guys, that the Dixie is the strength of the dollar versus foreign peer currencies. But like the idea here is that think of it as like a seesaw. Like if the Dixie is going up, the strength of the dollar is going up, then risk assets like stocks usually or Bitcoin or whatever, pick your thing. They typically go down. So we would love to build a scenario where the Dixie is going down, because that would imply like Bitcoin and crypto, et cetera, would likely be going up soon. All right. Continue.
Yeah. So the main reason why we care about Dixie at all, right, is because just like any other asset, if we're looking at something slamming into resistance, we should be hesitant here. If we look at something slamming into support, we should be hesitant here. And until this thing breaks this zone here, this zone that I mentioned that was long ago established back in the 80s, I don't see a scenario where Bitcoin or many other assets have a strong breakout to the upside. And vice versa, or similarly, rather, if this thing does continue going up, well, then there's a really, really good possibility that everything else goes down because it's like Jack said, it's a seesaw, right? It's either dollar or anti-dollar, and if it's anti-dollar, we risk on. If it's pro-dollar, we risk off, right? So when we look at the Bitcoin chart,
One other thing for DXY real quick.
Yeah.
Something else I forgot to mention is the calls for de-dollarization globally were like at their absolute peak at the very bottom, right? So like from a sentiment perspective, it only makes sense that we are bouncing, right? Because everyone was so certain, so bearish at the
right
bottom.
in here.
Yeah. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, and what that normally translates to, right? Like what that normally translates to for other assets is people hedge accordingly, which means that they're probably if they believe that the dollar is going down, then they're hedging this bet by going long on other assets. So there's this scenario that could happen where if the dollar actually does rally, there could be a situation where we have people put into high pain points on the downside of their assets. So say, for example, we're looking at SPY, S&P 500 ETF, and you're like, man, I feel really confident this is going to go up. And that's paired with this idea that the dollar is going to go down. Well, if the dollar bounces and this pulls back, there's a scenario where over leveraged individuals or people who panic can sell and cascade through all these levels. So if the dollar does rally aggressively, there is a possibility that we see an aggressive pullback on some of these assets that are kind of tightly wound right now. Like right now, S&P 500 is poised for, it looks very bullish. It looks like it's ready to just kind of creep through this cloud and continue to the upside. And the same thing with QQQ, the NASDAQ ETF. It looks very bullish. But if this thing fails, like say, for example, we're looking at this breakout level and this thing fails and it comes back down, that traps a ton of bulls here. And so there could be a point where people could get caught off sides pretty aggressively, right? So if we take that mindset and we look at the Bitcoin chart, as we near the monthly close, which is tomorrow, it's appropriate to start looking at the monthly candles. When we look at the monthly candles, we got to take it with a grain of salt because, a month in Bitcoin is like 6 months in traditional markets in terms of price volatility. When we look at the Bitcoin chart, it's not terribly insightful. Like we don't see anything structure-wise that's very alarming. But what we do see is this giant bearish engulfing candle. Engulfing candles have a really high strike rate in terms of playing out, both on the daily, weekly, and monthly. When we look at prior engulfing candles, both bullishly and let's see if I can find a bearish and bearishly, they tend to be really good signals, right? So here's an example of a bullish engulfing candle, which led into a massive rally, a bullish engulfing candle led to a massive rally, a bearish engulfing candle, which, you could argue led to a massive decline. So when we see monthly engulfing candles, like this should be alarming. At the very least, it should have us, hedging our bets a little bit and trying to be honest with ourselves. Like, how bullish am I really when the technicals are saying dollar looks like it's going to go up, and it looks like it's poised for a continuation of the upside. Bitcoin has this massive monthly bearish engulfing candle, and when we drill a little deeper down into the weekly, there's nothing super exciting here. We do have this Bollinger Bands consolidation, which is nice, and it is sitting above the midline. But if you've been around for a while, you know that the first week, first few days of any monthly open tends to be pretty volatile. And so the volatility isn't necessarily an indicator of where it's going to go after it resolves the volatility. But I could foresee a scenario where, tomorrow on Thursday, the monthly candle opens and we see some downside pressure that closes this below the weekly midline. And if we do that, then we should expect, just the general rule of thumb is anytime you close above or below, so it's not 100% strike rate, but it's pretty high. Anytime we close above, we usually target the other side of the B bands, very similar to like the edge to edge setup on clouds. And if we close below, then we should target the band below. So I can easily foresee a situation where the monthly candle opens up tomorrow. We see volatility going into the weekly close, which is on Sunday, and we get a close down below this midline. So the big main takeaways here are we need to watch, the monthly candle is objectively bearish, no question about it. But what we do need to watch is going into the weekly close, how it handles this midline. Because right now we have the B bands compressing, right? We have this squeeze, as John Bollinger calls it, the inventor of the B bands. And if we get a squeeze into a dump below this midline, that could give birth to a new downtrend. So we really need to watch this closely. Like, I'm not trying to scare the shit out of people here, but there's a lot of things below us that could provide cushioning. There's just this nice band of prices here. And the assumption should never be, like I try to harp on this, the assumption should never be that support isn't going to hold, because that more often than not is going to get your feelings hurt. But we definitely need to watch this with some skepticism, because we got this this looming monthly bearish engulfing candle that's going to take a month or two to resolve itself. We have this squeeze on the weekly on the B bands. And if we get a close below the weekly midline, we're at minimum looking to target this. This obviously is a dynamic target. So maybe it comes up and it kind of just trickles down here. So, both these conditions could be met where we retest this and this. But all that to say is I don't see a world where Bitcoin breaks to the upside here. Just like I don't see a world, like Josh was saying, where Dixie breaks to the downside. Everything is saying that, like, at most you should be cautious here. I'm sorry, at least you should be cautious here. At most you should be looking for reasons why you're wrong, and maybe looking to DCA a little lower, or at least have some conditions where if we close below this level, I've been saying this for a past few market hours, if we close below this zone here, maybe we come down here and we close, then this thing's going to hunt liquidity, and we would be looking for deeper levels for liquidity. So a lot of things are on the table right now. Even when we're looking intra-week, we saw a big rally over the weekend that basically got faded. And if we look a little lower, even on the 4-hour, we saw this giant rally, relatively giant rally, pretty strong, where it broke out of this level here, and it just gave it all back. And so exactly like what I was saying before with the breakout zone that gets closed below, anytime we see a breakout and it closes below, it's going to hunt liquidity. And in this case, it's going to hunt this, and then it's going to hunt this, and it's going to hunt this. Maybe this satiates the bear's hunger and it rallies. But if that fails, then it's going to go for these liquidity zones. So as the monthly candle opens, expect volatility. In general, it's not a very good idea to open fresh positions on the monthly open, which is tomorrow. So at minimum, not financial advice here, but I would personally not look to take any new positions until the weekly candle resolves itself, because that monthly bearish engulfing looks like absolute dog shit. And with the Dixie rallying like it does, it's not the best look for both Bitcoin and the dollar.
We also had meme coins popping off, which is historically never a good thing, regardless of when it happens.
And rugs.
Yeah. Who's the person that sends ETH to some place expecting
the nothing guy?
Like, this is worse than send me 5 ETH, I'll give you 550 back or whatever. Like, what are people doing?
Dude, did you see that account got up to $1 million today?
It's insane.
What are you guys talking about? I think I missed that.
There's a guy put out a tweet. He said he just put his own, Ethereum wallet address, and he put a GIF of Willy Wonka and Chocolate Factory where he's like, "You get nothing," and then I think he even replied later. He's like, "No, for real. If you send me money, you literally get nothing. Like, you get nothing." And people are like, "I'm in." Boom, and they send him money. Yeah, he's up to $1 million right now. Now, there's a lot of arguments of like, no, it's his own money, and he's just like causing it's just a thing.
Stupid.
Yeah, he's just me. Yeah, right. I mean, you would think, right? But I've been in a lot of NFT spaces, so I don't know.
Oh God.
I don't know. So
anyway,
that's
well,
crazy.
that does it for me.
Okay.
I got your,
all right.
Your resident bummer.
What about ETH? Do you look at ETH at all? I know you normally don't, but you have it up.
I
see you have it up.
Yeah, so it's been doing a lot of like nothing, right? Like it's just kind of been sideways as hell. One thing that I will note though is anytime I see structures like this, let me clear this thing up.
Yeah, what am I looking at?
Your future.
Looks like
Alright,
my
so-
kid's scribbling on a paper.
Just
So,
just
and-
stake and get rich, bro. It's fine. Don't worry about the chart.
Oh shit.
Okay? Everything's fine.
Dude, I had so many people in my chat when I think my peak was like 600 concurrent, and that is what everyone was all about, dude. It was you couldn't talk them out of it. This was at the Pico top of
Yeah.
the last run.
Up here.
Yeah. Stake and get rich, man.
Yeah. So the one thing that always gives me pause whenever I see structure like this, this is forever going to remind me of the 2018 bear market, where I see things like this, where it's successive failed rallies that are impulsive that bleed out, if we look back, for those who don't know your Bitcoin history,
Shame on you, number one.
yeah, shame on you for not being a fucking no-lifer over here. But here we see these impulsive rallies that bleed out, and they're just successive, like lower, and then they trickle and then dump. This looks very similar to this, right? Where it's going to get lower and then pop. Obviously, it's a much smaller scale. This is not anywhere equivalent to the scale and percentage moves that Bitcoin was seeing, but it is, in my mind, bearish nonetheless. And especially when we look at, like, I remember I was talking about this back when this thing failed to break out on the weekly, I think it was. There was a textbook Adam and Eve double bottom. So we get the Adam, we get the Eve, we got this clean neckline here, right? Something.
It literally looks like DXY, like just a few weeks past where DXY is now.
Yeah. So
Identical.
what the fuck is it?
People say TA doesn't work. Come on.
Yeah, like this.
I used TA on CS:GO skins the other day, and it actually worked. It's pretty funny.
Of course it did. Of course.
Yeah. Any market where you can trade, buy or sell goods, it should work.
There's like thousands of data points per day on this one thing. Anyway.
Yeah. But anyway, so like anytime we see a failed breakout, this is always like a big uh-oh. And we should be really sad about that, because failed breakouts, that's like, you had all the green lights in the world to run. You had everything going in your corner. And if you still fail to do that, that is, in my mind, one of the most bearish signals you can see. A failed bullish breakout is an early warning sign. This is the canary in the coal mine that there's usually more pain ahead. And that's because it just traps liquidity. It traps everyone up here that front ran it anywhere up here. They're like, oh, I see the Adam and Eve. And then once it breaks out and it dumps, you're trapped. GG. Now, where that goes from there, again, like I was saying before with Bitcoin, it hunts liquidity. When you have a failed breakout that comes back below the breakout level, it almost always hunts these liquidity points. Maybe it comes down here and bounces, or maybe it comes down here, boom, boom. But in my mind, coming down here is just an inevitability. It's not like is it going to happen? That just seems most likely scenario to me.
The other thing on that real quick, it's like, and this is useful for me to get my mind around it. Like, is it okay? So like say we're on that first red candle where it was a failed rejection. That candle closes red, like right there. Yeah. The thing I always ask myself is like, okay, if this was going to just go to the moon, so to speak, then would it give me this much time to load back up? Like wouldn't it leave me behind? Because this is how these moves work. Like even that, back in April 2022 on the same chart when everything cascaded to the downside, it was like it was making the move, and if you weren't in the direction of the move, you were off, like you lost. There was no long, multi-week pit stops along the way, and this is just how it tends to go. And so when I'm thinking about trying to break out trade, and then it's like, oh well, it's just a little pullback, it's just a 5% pullback, 10% pullback. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's something else entirely. Like you're saying.
Like if we did something like this, we broke out of this clean zone, you could argue it was a failed breakout at the time, but it's like, it obviously found cushioning on this thing here.
Right.
There's no equivalent structure here.
Right.
They failed breakout. And almost always with these breakouts, maybe getting throwbacks aren't as common as just full-blown continuation where it's just like a FOMO chamber. These are the scariest moves in my mind to trade, because you have no point of invalidation, and when you're wrong, you're really wrong. So that tends to spark a lot of degenerate traders, the highly lever, things get real crazy and weird. And like you said, we just don't see that here. It's more of just like this one and done. It popped out, it got the liquidity, and it's like, okay, we're chilling here. It's just waiting for for all hell to break loose. And in my mind, I would have wanted to see a stronger breakout that wasn't immediately faded. In this case, it at least had a couple of weeks above where it came down and it like shelved here very cleanly, and then it rallied, right? Like we just don't see that. It's like, oh, it's like it just blue balled. You broke up and bam, went right back down. So
That's a technical term, chat.
yeah, don't worry about it,
That
guys.
was
No,
a
you wouldn't understand.
That failed top was also the staking unlock. So it's not
yes,
Yes.
like
exactly.
I have that marked on my chart actually. The day
not
of the
like
unlock.
there wasn't some event that was just like randomly happening. Like everyone was looking at this for months. And then,
Yes.
of course it sold out, right? Buy the rumor, sell the news, whatever. Anyway.
Yeah. For those who don't know, it's Ether had a bunch of people that had coins that were locked up for a lock-in period, and this was when it became unlocked for a giant chunk of people. And so there's no coincidence that it rallied, hit this liquidity point, and then we unlocked, and then
Supply enters the market.
yeah. So I mean,
To be fair to ETH, there has been 2.3 million inflows since that period. Even still, price is where it's at.
What's
So,
an inflow?
yeah.
What's an inflow?
It's 2.3 million into staking. 2.3
Oh, into
million
the staking.
ETH.
Got it.
2.3 million ETH into staking.
I was thinking like to an exchange or something. I didn't get it.
No.
yeah, but if you're trying to stake, those are people that weren't going to sell anyway.
Right. Well, that's what people said before the unlock happened. These are true believers, Schmidt. They're not going to sell.
Staking is
hold
just the
forever.
new.
Yeah, but here's the thing:
They
if you
denominate their
stake-
life in Ethereum, okay?
If
Don't
you
you
staked up
understand?
here, no, wait, there's a difference. If you
Do you
staked
even
up
have
here,
that NFT profile, bro?
Yeah.
Here's the thing, okay? Like if you, I know we're like running short on time, so
We're good,
if
we're
if
good.
you staked up here, I don't give a shit how much of a believer you are. I've seen
Yes.
many a ETH
Yes.
bull get the living shit scared out of them after just a cool 82% drop.
Yep.
And they're like, oh, it's rallying, I'm
You
getting
nailed it.
out.
You know.
So that's the big difference here. And I guarantee you, if we drop lower and we rally, we'll see the same thing.
Josh, you were around for masternodes, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So staking is just the new masternodes in my mind. It's just the repackaged. It's the new game, and the same thing's going to happen to the stakers that happened to the masternode guys. It's just like Schmitty said. You're down bad enough that suddenly you start trying out different churches and find a Jesus, and you're like, you know what? I think I will sell the next time we get to a certain break even level.
Yeah. I mean, there are some people that their greed will just completely consume them, and they will just write it down. I'm not saying like Ether is going to zero or anything, but like everyone has a pain point. And when you are up some ungodly sum of money and you watch it all go back,
Mm-hmm.
it'll just make you question yourself. Anyway, that's all I got. Go ahead,
Everything
Chad.
All right, I'm up, I guess. So I'm gonna do that.
This is where we pivot to the bullish section of the stream.
Okay, so chat.
Should be
yeah.
super easy for you, by the way. Super easy.
Number
Chat
go
said
up.
short everything. Got it. Okay. Like, and then I gotta move my fat head. Wait, what? There we go.
Triangle.
Triangle. Yeah. We'll circle back to this. I don't actually want to lead off with this. So what we had? Yes, this little guy. So this is especially interesting to me as a Wyckoff fan, because anybody who comes to my streams, they know that this is something I'm always watching for. We're always talking about, no matter what it is. But there's this little nagging little thing in my mind saying, was this all this really was? Was this a sort of redistribution event? Which is, the implication here, chat, being, you have a sort of downtrend, you basically ping pong consolidate for a bit, run the highs, and then this is a sort of speed bump or pit stop or whatever before leading to new lows. which is more like what Schmitty was saying earlier. Now, so this is the bearish take, right? I know Josh lied to you and warned that I would be giving you good stuff, but this is not very bullish. By the way, I guess you guys have to see it on chat, huh? Like on the stream, I mean.
I'm watching the stream.
Okay. So this is the bearish take. It is perfectly reasonable. It's lower time frame than I like to see. I would also, if I was just designing my ideal scenario, I'd want this to have more of a downtrend than like a cleaner downtrend, I guess, to enter this zone. But that's just, I'm being a little nitpicky here, but it's relatively clean. We have equal highs, relatively equal lows, and then a run of the highs, and we've closed back in the range. Now, one thing we see a lot as far as trades go is a rally back to the high as a sort of like retest. Doesn't always happen, but if you're looking for a trade setup, this would probably be like a little point of optimum trade before the actual move takes place. I see that a lot.
The real traders call it the OTE. Okay.
The OTE. Okay. So let's talk about the like potential bullish scenario. Now, if I don't necessarily believe in this, but I always like to see both sides of the trade. One of the things that's just kind of caught my eye is there is this sort of falling wedge in the middle amidst all this stuff. This is, again, I'm not like putting my life savings into this.
He's curve fitting. He's curve fitting.
Oh my God. Yeah, right. He's curve fitting.
Looks good.
But there was something on Ethereum that caught my eye as well. It was very similar, but on a higher time frame. Hold on, let me get rid of all this because I want you guys to see it. By the way, there's our staking line. Lol. But higher time frame Ethereum isn't doing something much different. Now, this is a higher time frame, like I was saying, versus what Bitcoin is doing. But a little more consolidation and then, sort of breakout and off we go could be pretty interesting. So it's something I'll be keeping my eye on. I do lean, though, like what Schmitty was saying before, I do still think what makes the most sense is treating this as a sort of glorified trade range or points of liquidity, that eventually somebody's going to come down and hunt one way or another. So I do think the range lows make more sense than the sort of kind of goofy consolidation breakout, both on Ethereum and Bitcoin. So I'm not a huge believer, but I think it's worth paying attention to, because if all of a sudden we do wake out and we have a sort of breakout, both outside of the upper bounds of the trade range and this diagonal, but if we just suddenly wake up to something like this and with some consolidation involved, I think we needed to erase the chalkboard full of bear stuff and reconsider what we're looking at. So that's just that's why we have it. But for the time being, I do think it makes a lot more sense, especially with sorry for my dog, especially with how we've only been in this range, this consolidation range at let's call it the bear market lows. And I'm being generous with where I start that. We've only been here for 385 days. The last bear market for Ethereum was about 800 days after it broke out. From the start to the point of breakout was 700 days. So we're almost a year. We've had a year lesser amount of time spent in this consolidation range compared to last bear market. So current bear market compared to last. And don't forget, bear markets love to come down and run these lows, shake out any kind of last minute positions before any sort of breakouts. I know this is Ethereum showing this, but this is very common across the board. This is why the Wyckoff guys love looking for springs or whatever your school of trading might be, but this is very common to look for these kind of run of the lows before the actual move. So all that being said, I think it would make a lot of sense to see something like this leading into the Bitcoin halving, which is 300 days away or so, and then we can have our fun after that. But between now and then, yeah, I don't see a whole lot of I don't see a whole lot of fun. The Dixie, you guys have pretty well covered all this. There's not a whole lot more to say. There were some downtrends that broke, whatever. One thing I did want to point out, just because I thought I think it'd be interesting to see. Imagine a scenario where we do get a sort of breakout, maybe even like a little consolidation, and then a big impulsive move. And next thing you know, we're having conversations like, oh, this was actually, the redistribution of the dollar, right? This is And then if the timing works out, this could lead to the next Bitcoin bull market, et cetera, et cetera. I don't have any reason to see that right now, but anytime I see a sort of, series of equal highs and equal lows, I start kind of wondering, especially based on the fact that it didn't really come back down to its lows. It's, is after going parabolic so hard, is a retrace of 11% really enough? Or would it make more sense that perhaps this is a sort of, call it a breakdown consolidation leading to whatever the ultimate low is for this particular period? To me, that makes more sense than like, oh yeah, this is the bottom and off we go. It's the next Dixie bull run or risk on assets bear market. But time will tell. So I just thought that was worth sharing. I thought that was interesting. Ethereum on the Bitcoin pair, going back to our like keeping an eye out for potential bullish setups, etc. There's a bunch of different ways to draw these diagonals, both linear and on log, and by pretty much all metrics, this is broken out. And this is not something you'd see in a sort of scary bearish downtrend. So if in most of the time, whenever Bitcoin breaks down, you'll see just about any alt Bitcoin pair break down as well. As people flee their alts or take profit from their alts and move back into Bitcoin. This is just like a normal thing to see. But the fact that this is starting to break out, despite having, 17 million chances to break down here, especially coming up against this descending. So you have your support and resistance line, right? So this is your resistance line. And there's a lot of touches there where it could have just drop down to the downside, and it didn't happen. It still might. Maybe we're early, right? Like maybe tomorrow or the next day or something, we get something where this was a sort of glorified fake out before it broke down. Time will tell, but that to me does not seem like the most bearish thing in the world. And then on that note, that coming back to what my screen was first on at the beginning, was that the Bitcoin dominance, despite having on the lower time frame, like if we use the replay tool, we can see this pretty clearly. Oh, I can't do it on this. Never mind.
Why?
I don't know. It said down here at the bottom, it is not available for this current symbol. Okay. Well,
Weird.
Yeah, very weird. There was a breakout, and this was something I was pretty interested in because there was, we're on the daily here, but if we go down to say like the hourly or whatever, there was a number of little downtrends that had broken very cleanly, and all of a sudden, there was the breakout, sure, and it gave it back. So if things were to get worse, like I was saying, the normal thing to see is for Bitcoin dominance to rise in kind of scary periods of time, just because people would seek comfort in Bitcoin versus a lot of these alts. But what we had was a sort of failure to launch, it broke out, it failed to continue, and now we're back to the range lows. Should this break down and drop? I don't know what, if there's a scenario where Bitcoin drops, alts drop, but dominance drops with it, that's going to surprise the hell out of me. I got nothing for you there. But if, on the other hand, if things do, let's say we wake up and things are magically bullish again for reasons unknown, then you would expect to see rather the Bitcoin dominance drop and this be a sort of glorified alt season. So all the historic alt seasons almost across the board, there's this level where we impulse up into. This is why I have it marked as this multi-year reversal level, because Bitcoin would go up, and then during these down periods, this was an alt season. This was like DeFi summer, or whatever. Like actually that was back here. This was DeFi summer. But you had all these little mini alt seasons that occurred kind of along the way. There were some sudden Doge impulses and this, that, and the other. So you would expect to see something like that again if this rallied. Now, the reason I'm not like positioning or being like excited for an alt season is these were all like kind of V reversals every time we got up here and rallied back down. And what we've had recently is like 60 days up here. So I really am still expecting this to break up, but I don't know how to connect that belief or that thought with the fact that there was a sort of lower time frame failure to launch. But that's all I have. Guys, what do y'all think of this, of dominance?
I mean, we could just see alts keep leading, like the dip that keeps on dipping for alts, because who's buying alts here?
Mhm.
Is it US retail? No. Is it
Mhm.
US institutional? No. Is it international institutional? Maybe. Who was fueling the alt rallies in the past? To me, that was US retail. It doesn't mean they can't come back. It's just they don't have stimmies. Regulations suck. Like the list goes on and on and on. I've been actually tracking kind of a different version of dominance, just looking at like a layer one index. I post it every week in the weekly stuff I do for Valkyrie, and that has been flat for just as long as dominance has been flat. So it's not like we're seeing like any random excitement as a group in layer one alts. You can look at like Ripple on one given day and say, oh man, look at alts, right?
Right.
That's not what we're seeing as a group collectively.
All right, good take. And chat, we're trying to get y'all out of here in the next few minutes, but let me conclude on this because I just think it's kind of a cool chart. There we go. So blue is, let me show you real quick. Up here in the top, you can see Bitcoin is blue, crypto is red. This is the interest over time. So this is Google Trends, and you could see that during 2020 into 2021, both of these things spiked, varying degrees, Bitcoin being the biggest. Sorry, crypto guys. But even here lately in kind of the mid 2022, there was a big spike for Bitcoin. But now everything's quiet. Everything is kind of back down to its lows. And if you do any kind of content creation around crypto or Bitcoin or whatever, like all the three of us do, there, that this is a truth. Like nobody cares. No one's blowing you up for questions. The audience numbers are down. All that stuff is down bad. But that's exactly what you'd want, right? Like Josh said, isn't this is like one of the best buy signals you can possibly get, that you're not buying at peak hysteria and euphoria. You're actually buying, you think of the Wall Street psychology chart, you're buying kind of down there in the lows.
Yeah, if you are a true believer in a long-term 4-year cycle, then this is what you want. You have to remember at times like this, when you're riding that 70K high on Bitcoin,
Yep.
Just like that, things can change in the blink of an eye.
And if we do go to say 100,000, in the years to come, you remember times like these when everyone's like, "Oh, you were so lucky. Oh, you were so lucky to get in early. That must have been the easiest trade ever. You just buy a little." You think of all this volatility.
Yeah, I mean, I can still remember 2015, 2014. Like it was the same way. You think it's bad now? Back then there was like 5 people. Okay, nobody cared about anything. At least now there's like, Bloomberg has a whole section of their business dedicated to crypto, and
right,
the list goes on and on. But like back
that
then,
was the dream for a major news network to even talk about Bitcoin.
Yeah, back then it was the absolute doldrums for sure.
I remember this 2015 wick, they called it the failed experiment. This is They always referred to Bitcoin as the failed experiment during that. And that was $150, and in hindsight everybody's like, "Oh my god, if only I bought." You wouldn't have bought. You wouldn't have bought there.
When the time comes to buy, you're not gonna wanna.
You ain't gonna do it.
The expression.
Yeah, that's it.
All right. So we're all bearish. Sorry, chat. I don't know what to say. But,
so we're probably going up.
Yeah.
If that's crowded trade is, we're all bearish. Exactly. Well, what else, guys? Anything else?
I think that's it.
I think that's it.
Schmitty even alive anymore?
Schmitty.
Just make sure you stay tuned to my regular streams that I'm doing 3 times a week.
Yeah, good comps. Yep. He's lying to your face, chat. He wants you to sub.
I'm no lifing Russ instead.
And I'm in there with
community to another.
Rust is fun. We've actually enjoyed the hell out of Rust. It's been pretty fun. Chat, be on the lookout on my Twitter specifically, none of these other guys, because I'm gonna put out a send me money for nothing tweet, and if y'all want to send me a cool mill, hey, y'all just go for it, okay?
Not financial advice, but drain your savings.
I'm in no part of that in any way.
I know. I'm scared to even do it. I'd somehow get a lawsuit served. But after watching watching the bin.eth stuff and all the things BitBoy goes for, it's like, man, do lawsuits even exist anymore? Like, do people go after people, or I mean, what in the world? That's a rabbit hole for another time. But if y'all haven't looked into that, go check out the bin.eth stuff. Get you some coffee, little donut. Go sit down and read up on it and have a giggle, bear market giggle. All right, chat, we love you. Thank you. We will
See you in 2 weeks.
Yeah, we'll see you in a couple weeks. We'll put this up on YouTube somewhere. Shout out to Pantago, who does all that stuff for us. Anyway, all right. Any final words, guys? Anything?
That's all I got.
All right.
Be sure to have your pets spayed and neutered.
Oh my God, this guy.
Who was it that said that? As Bob Barker would say that?
Yeah, that was what, Price is Right guy?
Yeah.
Takes me back. Chat's like, who? All right. See you guys. Take care. Bye.